Namaskar, and Ankita Saxena. Over the next 1 hour, we'll take you through all the global and domestic cues that you need to keep an eye out for, and also tell you about the stocks that you need to watch out for today before the start of T-Street. But let's get started with an eye on the globe. First up, let's take stock of how the U.S. markets fared overnight. Well, Wall Street is riding high on Thursday, that is overnight. The Dow jumped over 600 points to close above that 46,000 mark for the first time. The S&P 500 that also gained nearly 1%, whereas the Nasdaq Composite that advanced about 0.7%. Now, all three major averages they did end at the record levels. Now, this move came as investors are weighing hotter than expected inflation data, but they're more focused on weak jobless claims, which hit the highest level since October 2020. Now, this shift has boosted bets that the Fed will cut rates next week itself, with the futures markets pricing in a quarter-point cut almost for sure. Now, for the week, all three indices are up about 1.5%. The S&P 500, in fact, is on pace for its best week since early August. Nasdaq is set for its second straight winning week, whereas the Dow, that is snapping a 2-week losing streak. Now, looking ahead, all eyes are going to be on Fed's September 17th policy meeting, where that rate cut decision is due. It could set the tone for the markets in the weeks ahead. Well, that's about the U.S. markets, but let's next talk about how the commodity market is shaping up. Ankita, how are crude prices looking?
Well, Kanishka, oil prices fell on Thursday, pressured by concerns over softening U.S. demand and broad oversupply that offset the threats of an output from conflict in the Middle East and the Russian war in Ukraine. The Brent crude futures were down $1.12 or 1.6% to close in at $66.37 a barrel, and the WTI futures lost almost $1.3 or 2% to settle in at $62.37 a barrel. Now, oil prices are falling in response to the bearish IEA headlines, which suggest that massive oversupply on the oil market is likely next year. Now, the International Energy Agency had also said that it's a monthly report that would the world oil supply will rise more rapidly than expected this year on OPEC Plus's increased output further. Now, however, the OPEC Plus report, published after the IEA's kept on a non-OPEC supply and demand forecast for the year unchanged, citing steady demand. The organization, now remember, the OPEC Plus allies, our group collectively, has decided on Sunday to raise the production from October, and the market is now torn between a perceived supply shortage due to a rise in the tensions in the Middle East and the Ukraine, and an actual oversupply from a higher OPEC Plus production and the swelling stocks. On the back of that, we did see oil prices moderating a bit from the three-session gains that we saw coming in on oil. We did see a bit of a moderation coming in on the back of an oversupply concern.
That's right. So a downtick coming in as far as oil prices are concerned, and also gold on the other hand. But moving on to some more macro data that is coming out of the U.S. Now, inflation in the U.S. is running hotter than expected. The consumer price index jumped 0.4% in August. That's the sharpest increase since January this year, lifting the annual rate to 2.9%. Rising shelter, food and energy costs, these are the factors that drove much of the gain. Now, at the same time, the Labour Department also reported a surprise jump in unemployment claims. Now, 263,000 Americans filed last week. That's the highest level since October 2021 and well above expectations. Now, this mix of higher prices and weaker jobs, this creates a complicated backdrop for Federal Reserve. Now, policymakers meet September 17th to decide their next move on interest rates. Now, amid a slowing economy, Andrew Ferris is also calling for Fed rate cuts. Let's listen in to his comments.
I was the Fed. I will not cut rates. But the Fed will need to cut rates, okay, because they're under pressure now that the economy is not doing very well in terms of the labor market. But at least inflation is absolutely clearly accelerating, is not coming down. The impact of input duties have not yet been passed through. It has been both expectations and what has happened in the past. In other words, prices just don't simply jump up because you put a 50% input duty on certain goods. So I'm going to stick my neck out. Okay, if you are asking me what the Fed is going to do, well, I think they are under tremendous pressure to cut interest rates. I think that will be a very bad move really very poor move, okay, because the cuts in interest rates are going to take quite a while to impact the labor market, but they will have a much faster impact potentially on demand and on potentially, of course, on the stock market.
And while the U.S. is warming up to India, Ambassador-designate Sergio Gore told senators that trade talks will begin next week in Washington, and the President Trump is inviting India's commerce ministers. Gore said a deal could be finalized within weeks, calling India a strategic partner whose trajectory will shape the region. Now, Senator Marco Rubio also echoed that view, flagging India as a top relationship for America's future, particularly in countering China's influence in the Indo-Pacific. Both leaders stressed defense, energy, technology as pillars of the partnership. Let's go across and listen in to those excerpts.
I'm here to introduce a fellow Floridian and someone who I've known for a very long time, Sergio Gore, who is the nominee to India, which is, I would say, one of the top relationships the United States has in the world today in terms of the future of what the world's going to look like. I said it when I appeared before you as a nominee to the position I currently hold as well.
We might have our moment of hiccups right now. We are on the track of resolving that. Our relationship with the Indian government, with the people of India, extends many more decades, and it's a much warmer relationship than they have with the Chinese. Frankly, they are concerned by Chinese expansionism. And Chinese expansionism is not just on the border of India, it's all over the area. We will make that a top priority, that India is pulled into our side and away from them. President Trump has been crystal clear on this. They must stop buying Russian oil. And I believe almost every single member of this committee has co-sponsored Senator Graham's legislation, which has proposed a 500% tariff on secondary purchase and reselling of Russian oil. The president has only imposed a 25% tariff, and he's fully encouraging also European partners and others around the world to stop that. Our tariffs work if our partners around the world are on the same page. If we're unilaterally putting tariffs on someone, but they're able to buy the same oil and resell the same oil through China, through India, through Brazil, that's a problem.
All right, so that's the latest official word coming on India and US ties. But moving on to some more global stories. First up, let's take stock of how the IMF is positioning U.S. economy. Now, the International Monetary Fund says that the U.S. economy is showing new strains after years of resilience. Domestic demand is slowing, job growth is weakening, and a major labor revision found that fewer jobs were created through March. Now, IMF spokesperson Julie Kozak has warned that tariffs imposed under the Trump administration are adding upside risks to inflation, despite progress towards Fed's 2% target. Now, the IMF says that there is scope for rate cuts, but urged caution ahead of the U.S. review in November.
All right, let's move on to the top headlines, quick fatafats for the hour. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby says Spirit Airlines is doomed. Speaking at an industry conference, he predicted Spirit will go out of business, quipping, "Because I'm good at math." Spirit filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy last month. It's second in a year. A high cost and weak demand crushed its discount model. Kirby blasted the low-fare, high-fee approach, saying, "You can't have a business model that customers hate." And Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella is promising change. In an online meeting last evening, he acknowledged the company must rebuild trust with employees after layoffs and a mandated return to office. Nadella told staff, "We can do better and we will do better." Microsoft, remember, had cut 9,000 jobs in July, and starting February, workers near the headquarters will need to be in office 3 days a week. Leadership says the feedback is mixed. Some feel they're losing autonomy, while others welcome more collaboration.
Next up, former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been sentenced to 27 years in prison after a landmark conviction for plotting a coup. Bolsonaro blasted the decision as a witch hunt and vowed to fight on. Now, despite being barred from the office, he insists that he will run in Brazil's 2026 presidential elections. Next up, Gemini, the crypto exchange founded by Winklevoss twins has priced its IPO at $28 per share, valuing the company at about $3.3 billion. Now, adding to the momentum, Nasdaq invested $50 million that's aiming to integrate Gemini's custody services and its Calypso trading platform.
And European Trade Commissioner Marcos Sefcovic and Commissioner of Agriculture and Food Christopher Hansen are in India on a two-day visit to lead the negotiations on the free trade agreement between India and the European Union. The goal is to strengthen ties between India and EU. A trade agreement with EFTA is expected later this year. My colleague Sumita is joining in with the details of that.
That's an important visit is currently underway in New Delhi. European Union officials are on a visit from today and tomorrow. This even as the 13th round of talks between India and the European Union for an FTA are currently underway in New Delhi. So who's coming? Well, Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic, he's going to be meeting with Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. Along with him, Agriculture Commissioner Christoph Hansen is also going to take part in these talks. And EU officials will essentially unveil the strategic vision and roadmap for ties between the two nations. And this visit should also be seen as part of efforts that the European Union is making to reach and finalize an FTA agreement. Remember, 11 chapters, including trade facilitation, dispute settlement, SME competition, have already been discussed in the 12th round of talks, which concluded in Brussels. However, there are differences that persist as far as rules of origin are concerned, market access is concerned, duties on wine, dairy, and non-tariff barriers are concerned. Overall, India-EU trade that reached $135 billion in FY 23-24. However, leaders from both the sides, both the Prime Minister and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, they have assured their readiness to conclude this trade deal by the end of 2025, as they had discussed earlier this year. But why is the India-EU FTA significant? Given the fact that Donald Trump's tariffs have created disruption across the global trade order, particularly for India as well, given the elevated 50% tariff on India, and Trump has also been reportedly urging 50% tariff on India, and Trump has also been reportedly urging EU to ramp up tariffs on India. However, whether EU does that or not, that remains to be seen. And this is also important given the fact that EU and the United States have already announced a trade deal, but there is readiness on the part of EU also to close this deal, given the flexibilities that EU indicated as far as the contentious CBAM issue is concerned. In fact, very recently, the European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen stated that we need to double down on diversification and partnerships as the global trading system is crumbling, and they're looking at finalizing negotiations for a historic deal, she said, with India.
All right, thanks, Amita, for taking us through the latest details as far as the India-EU FTA is concerned. But on that note, we'll take a very short break. Be right back with more news and updates coming up on the other side. Record level. The Asian markets have also opened up in the green. It's a sea of green. In fact, ASX 200 up about 0.7% at that 8,869 level. On the other hand, we have Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, which is leading the gains within the Asia Pacific markets. It's up more than 1.5%. Oh, it's up 1.5% at the 26,426 odd level. On the other hand, there's South Korea's Kospi Index, which is also trading more than 1% higher as we speak at that 3,380 odd level. On the other hand, Japan's Nikkei, that's also trading up in the green. It's up nearly 0.5% at that 44,661 level. It's up more than 0.5% right now. On the other hand, there's China's Shanghai Index, which is also trading in the green, but it's up about 0.2% right now at that 3,878 level. It's become flat, absolutely flat right now, but still managing to trade in the green. Now, remember, we have a news update coming for China. China has want Mexico to think twice before raising tariffs and has also threatened countermeasures. So let's see how the market reacts to that. Currently, it continues to trade in the green. And for the Nifty as well, it was As of now, we are penciling. We did manage to end above that 25,000 level yesterday, holding on to that 25,000 level, which we gave up the day before. But we ended above that level, and today as well, we are penciling in a start in the green, up about 76 odd points at the open for Dalal Street. That's what we are expecting. So a positive start for Nifty is what we are penciling in right now. Ankita?
Well, yes, a 76-point uptick is what we are seeing on Nifty at the start. Now, remember, Nifty had reclaimed its 25,000 mark yesterday. We ended the day yesterday with minor gains, but remember that Nifty managed to close and stick to the 25,000 levels even at the close. Now, as the benchmark indices see some lift up halfway, Nifty Bank registered steady gains, recovering nearly 300 points from the opening lows. Broader markets mirrored benchmark indices, and there's lots more cues on how the market ended and what to watch out for. Let's go across to my colleague Snehi, who's getting us more updates from yesterday's market action. Snehi, take it away.
Well, yes, an absolutely flat day of trade is something that our market saw. We've managed to hold above the 25,000 level, but very nominally, because we closed at 25,005 on the Nifty, a 0.2% uptick coming there. On the Sensex, Nifty Bank rather, saw some gains coming in towards the midday mark, which fizzled all of that towards the end of the day, but nonetheless has managed to close in the green. It's the rupee that was slightly concerning, an all-time low coming in against the US dollar, levels around 88.45. So that is the new low that the rupee has hit against the dollar. But other than that, if you take a look at some sectoral gainers and losers, you had all eyes on the energy pack, PSU banks, pharma, metal, bank, FMCG, realty. All of them have done well, with some pressure building in on auto and IT names. If you take a look at some names from the energy pack, BHEL, NHPC, NLC India, GAIL from oil and gas, they've also done very well for themselves. Select PSU banks like PNB, Canara Bank, UCO Bank, Union Bank were top gainers from the PSU space. Aurobindo Pharma, one special mention to the stock because the kind of run up the stock saw 6% intraday jump up on the back of another private equity firm in the contention for the Zentiva's business. So positive for Aurobindo Pharma and a 6% uptick on that stock, followed by Gland, Alchem and Sun Pharma. On the flip side, pressure building in on some of the IT names that were doing very well in the previous trading session. So pressure on Infosys, OFSS, Infosys, Wipro, LTI Mindtree as well as Tech Mahindra. Select capital market themes were in the dumps. You had Angel One and BSE, both were down about 5%. So these were some of the top losers from the Nifty 500 group of stocks, joined by Godfrey Phillips, Gujarat Fluorochemicals, Ola Electric, Whirlpool, Wockhardt, Aadhar Housing Finance. These were some of the big losers coming in from the top Nifty 500 group of stocks. So, well, yes, 25,005 is the level that we have maintained. Let's see if we're able to meaningfully scale and hold above those 25,000 levels.
All right, thanks, Mehi, for taking us through the roundup of all the market action yesterday. But moving on, let's take a look at which are the stocks that we need to keep on our radar today. And Ashesha is ready with that list. Ashesha, which are the stocks that you're tracking?
Well, yes, let's start off with Cohance Life Sciences, and positive news flow coming in for this company on the back of some positive US FDA action, where the company said that US FDA has completed general current GMP audit for its facility in Andhra Pradesh, and the audit was conducted over the last few days and it has received 0 observations in Form 483. So very positive announcement that has come in. Cohance Life Sciences in focus on the back of that. Meanwhile, a whole host of defense counters, the likes of HAL and several other defense stocks will also be in focus, and this is because sources are telling ET now that US Department of Defense officials are set to come to India. This is likely to happen between the 16th and 19th of September, and the visit is for holding talks on procurement of several aircraft. So perhaps more order wins could come in their way, and that is the reason the entire defense pack will also be in focus today. Meanwhile, Canara Bank, positive news flow for this company as well, where Canara Robeco AMC has received final observations from SEBI to file its RHP. So perhaps potentially this could get listed over the next few months, because of which Canara Bank will also be in focus. GAIL, where City Gas arm of GAIL, which is City Gas, is planning to get listed, and brokerage houses expects perhaps some value addition to the stock price of this on the back of this development. So GAIL will also be in focus. RailTel, meanwhile, on the back of order wins, the company has received 2 orders worth 100 crores. So keep an eye out on that. A whole host of solar related stocks, the likes of Vikram Solar, Wari, Premium Energy, Tata Power, will also be in focus, and this is because Energy Minister has given some strong comments where he said
that India is targeting Swadeshi solar cells by 2028, and we are now moving towards indigenous ingots, and government will ensure entire solar manufacturing ecosystem is established within India itself. So on the back of this indigenization move, a whole host of solar companies will also be in focus. Lastly, TFS or Travel Food Systems will also be in focus, and this because company has been granted LOA of license. This is for setting up its manufacturing facility at T1 of Cochin International Airport. So on the back of this positive development that has come in, keep an eye out on TFS as well.
All right, so these are the stocks that we need to watch out for. But Sharad is also joining us with all the stocks, more stocks to keep on your radar before the start of D-Street. Sharad, tell us what are the stocks that we need to look out for?
At first, the focus is on Infosys, the neutral to negative impact expected as they have approved an 18,000 crore share buyback at 1,800 rupees. That is roughly coming at a 19% premium. As per calculation, the buyback size is around 2.41% of the equity and 18.9% of the total net worth. For the retail itself, the acceptance ratio is likely to be around 5.4%, and there might be a selling pressure in the stock. BSE Angel One positive news flash sources to it now suggest that long-term F&O contracts are not part of SEBI board meet agenda today, and SEBI has no proposal to end weekly expiry as of now. Positive news for NBCC as they received 3,700 crore worth of projects from RICO. And if you look at Lodha Developers, another positive momentum for the stock as they have signed an MOU for 30,000 crore rupees for green integrated data center parks. Bharat Forge also having an alliance with Wind Racers for a strategic MOU for UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle operations in India, and also signing an agreement of artillery system critical parts with Grade 1 with its arm. JBM Auto, their arm Eco-Mobility, has secured a $100 million capital investment from International Financial Corporation, and they will be infused to purchase and operate 1,455 electric buses. And lastly, Marico has increased its stake in D2C company True Elements, a parent company, from 54% to 100% with a consideration of 138 crore rupees.
All right, thanks, Sharad, for taking us through that list. A lot of stocks to keep on our radar today. But moving on, let's get back Snehi to take us through cues that we need to keep an eye out for later today.
Well, yes, lots of cues to watch out for on the macroeconomic front. India's inflation print in the form of CPI is going to be a very important event to watch out for. Other than that, we'll also be having the SEBI meet, the outcome of which is going to be very important to track. And EU commissioners are going to be visiting India for FTA talks with Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. So another event to watch out for very closely. Now, in terms of some global action from the US, you can expect to see University of Michigan consumer sentiment, very important macroeconomic indicator here. From UK and Japan, we're expecting their industrial production numbers to be out as well. Shifting focus back home, all eyes are going to be on ICICI Prudential Life because the board of that company is going to be mulling fundraising. So watch out for announcements on this front, and a whole host of stocks will be trading ex-dividend, the likes of Mrs. Bector's Foods, Cochin Shipyard, Garden Reach, Kajaria Ceramics, KPI Green, RHI Magnesita, Talbro, Mastec, and a whole host of other stocks. In terms of AGMs then, all eyes are going to be on Route Mobile, Whirlpool, Kalyan Jewelers, MCX, Finolex Industries and Hoodco, that they're going to be holding their annual general meetings tomorrow. In terms of some IPOs then, in an exuberance in the primary market, watch out for closing of the 3 IPOs that have recently opened. Last day to subscribe to the shares of Urban Company, Shringar House of Mangalsutra, as well as Wave Accelerator. And lastly, in terms of some other events, ECB Governing Council member Oli Ren is also expected to speak. So this commentary also crucial to track. So watch out for all of these cues, all of them very important to track.
All right, with that, it's time for us to step into a short break. Don't go anywhere after the break. We're getting you more updates on the market. Stay tuned.
Two-day PSB's month and on the next set of banking reforms, a very significant development coming in. Heads of PSB's, RBI Deputy Governor and ministry officials will attend the meeting. Impact of various reform measures will be assessed. Next generation PSBs reforms likely to be discussed as well. Various theme-based sessions and panel discussions have been planned where issues related to transforming Indian PSBs for global leadership and a strategic roadmap for government-owned banks are on the agenda. Sources are also indicating that the use of AI, governance, asset quality and customer experience are also there on the agenda for discussion, where a wide range of discussions will take place on AI-powered banks of the future. Discussions likely to include modernizing PSBs and building globally competitive public sector banks for Viksit Bharat 2047.
Right, thanks, Prakash, for all those details. But moving on, the SEBI board meeting is set to be held in Mumbai today. The market regulator may consider approving relaxations for large IPOs and minimum public shareholding norms as well. My colleague Ankur Mishra is now joining us with more details. Ankur, tell us what is likely on the agenda for today's SEBI board meeting.
Yes, SEBI board is going to meet on Friday, and we understand that on the agenda may be minimum public shareholding norms. Remember, this discussion paper was earlier released by SEBI, and in that it was proposed that MPO, meaning minimum public offer, will be based on the few of the limits, and therefore the limits will be set according to discussion paper or not. That is something which needs to be seen. But more importantly, there is a timeline which was proposed in the discussion paper whereby the 25% minimum public shareholding can be achieved up to 10 years. So it will be a kind of benefit for the large companies when they are coming for IPOs, because the restriction is now restriction will be eased if these norms are approved in the entirety. And more importantly, there is a benefit for the listed entities as well, who are supposed to meet this minimum public shareholding norms. Apart from that, there is also focus on ease of doing business, which has been the case ever since new SEBI chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey has taken over. And with that, we understand that board may clear a proposal on a single window clearance for low-risk foreign investors, and which they seek to participate in the Indian securities market. Now, this is aimed at simplifying the compliance and enhancing the attractiveness of India as far as foreign investors are concerned. This will be called Swagat FI. Remember, this discussion paper was released earlier by market regulator, and we understand that finally there may be approval of board when the board meets on Friday regarding that. Apart from that, low-risk foreign investors identified by SEBI, own government-owned funds, central banks, all these pension funds, they are likely to benefit with these kind of norms. But all in all, the reforms is going to be the agenda of SEBI board meeting. We may see some of the proposals getting cleared in this board meeting.
Well, Ankur, stay on with us. The market regulator also discusses today ending the weekly FNO contracts and focus on the long-term contracts as well.
Yes, we understand through sources that SEBI board is not likely to take up the proposal of longer-term FNO contracts. In fact, if you talk currently, there is no proposal at the table of SEBI regarding the weekly expiries of weekly FNO contracts. Remember, there was a statement which was made by Tuhin Kanta Pandey, SEBI chairman, earlier on 21st of August, stating that yes, SEBI is considering if at all there is a need for longer term contracts, because this is important for market making, it is important for hedging instruments, and they will take the consultation from the industry. There will be a feedback which will be sought by the industry, but this is not a proposal yet. This is something which SEBI is currently thinking. This is something which is an idea stage, but nothing has reached to the table of SEBI. However, if you talk about a specific board meeting on Friday, this is not part of the agenda. But yes, SEBI is considering the idea of longer term contracts as stated by SEBI chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey earlier. But for now, that proposal has not reached the table of market regulator.
All right, thanks, Ankur, for taking us through all that's on the agenda for the SEBI board meeting and also what is not on the agenda today. But moving on, lots of action yesterday in terms of the sector. We had seen a whole gamut of conversations on the latest issues, policy and industry related. My colleague Nivedana is now joining us with the key takeaways from the Siam event.
Many dialogues, but only one destination, the national capital, as the 65th Siam Conclave was held in Delhi. Let's talk about the fact that this was an opportunity for the industry to be looking at different facts that are happening in the automobile industry, but it also an opportunity to see how companies are really navigating this. The number one takeaway as far as is concerned is the GST rate rationalization. We know that this has been a welcome move and everybody's spoken about how this has been a great policy push from the side of the government, but they've clubbed it with how this is essential timing. It's bonanza timing, a lot of them going on to call it Diwali before Diwali, and they're expecting the sales to do really well, given the fact that we're just not talking about the rate rationalization, but also that how consumers will now have that opportunity to really rejig their budget with that particular discounts that they will be getting. But let's also talk about the fact that one thing that was put on focus was the cess, the ambiguity of it. So there's a lot of conversation about that. In fact, Siam President Shailesh Chandra spoke about how FADA as well as Siam has put forth that dialogue as to how they're going to navigate, but it remains to be seen how they're going to overcome that. But let's also talk about how Union Minister Nitin Gadkari, who was present at the event, spoke about sustainability as well as safety. When sustainability comes into question over here, he touched upon how this is a vision with the E20 rollout. Is there criticism? Yes, but that's being navigated as well, essentially how that would come together for the industry as well as the sector. Now that is of course something that is being looked at on a bigger roadmap. But let's also touch upon safety quickly, because Nitin Gadkari spoke about how road safety facilities are very important and they want to do more to ensure that particular education is meted out to citizens. More importantly, because the minister believed that at some point that human behavior is also problematic in terms of how this has been a challenge for them to really become successful, at least in bringing down those fertility rates. But speaking about other conversations that have happened here, let's also put into perspective that the EV story, the India growth story, that everybody was here at Siam spoke about how this is an opportunity not just for India to really look at that particular vision, but also in terms of exports, what it means for the current synergy for that vision to come together and what of course lies ahead. Now all in all, it was a power-packed event, many dialogues, many conversations, many visions that have been put forth. Now how is that going to navigate, and ultimately what will that pan out to be? That remains to be seen.
All right, let's move on to the top news for the day then. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced financial assistance of 1,200 crore rupees for relief and rehabilitation in Uttarakhand. The Prime Minister also declared an engrata of rupees 2 lakh for the families of those who lost their lives and 50,000 rupees for those who were injured. And Prime Minister Modi will attend the international conference on Gyan Bharatam today at 4:30 p.m. at the Vigyan Bhavan, New Delhi. He will also launch the Gyan Bharatam portal to boost manuscript digitization and address the gathering as well.
Incessant rains and flash floods wreaked havoc in Jammu division, with bridges collapsing, houses getting damaged. The basmati fields are also getting destroyed. All right, on that note, we'll take a very short break. We'll bring you more news and updates on the other side.
Remember, is GAIL's wholly owned subsidiary, and if at all this goes through, this will be a big positive for GAIL as well. Now, if we talk about GAIL Gas, it operates directly in about 16 geographical areas. It operates in 9 geographical areas through its joint ventures, and GAIL is also in the process of transferring 6 of its own geographical areas shares to GAIL Gas, which is its wholly owned subsidiary. So that's as far as operations of GAIL Gas are concerned. Meanwhile, Citi has also come out with its report on this, where they believe that the listing of GAIL Gas is likely to go through, and as and when it goes through, it could add about 5 to 6% value for the shareholders of GAIL, which in absolute terms translates to about 10 to 11 rupees per share. And they say regulatory tariff hike remains the key catalyst for the stock going forward. So yes, big development coming in for GAIL, where it is exploring listing of its wholly owned subsidiary GAIL Gas, and the stock in focus on the back of this.
And well, Infosys is a stock that will be in focus and has been in focus for the last 2 days on the back of the buyback. Now, Infosys has approved its largest ever share buyback worth 18,000 crores at 1,800 per share. This is nearly double its 2022 buyback of 9,300 crores. Remember, Infosys sits on over 42,000 crores in cash, giving it headroom for payouts despite global IT demand pressures. My colleague Pulkit is now joining in with the details of this buyback. Pulkit, over to you.
Good morning, Ankita. So as you clearly mentioned, the Infosys has decided the price of 1,800 per share for the buyback. Last time when the Infosys announced, the price was around 1850. So this time the premium is a little less than the previous buyback, and the current market price of Infosys is around 1512. So if we calculate the premium, it is around 19% from yesterday's closing price. The total amount of buyback is around 18,000 crore, and 10 crore shares will be tendered for the buyback process. If we talk about the retail acceptance ratio, it is minimum around 5.4%. So if any retailer buys 100 shares, so only minimum 5 shares will be tendered from him, and the break-even price will be around 1496 per share. So if the price of the Infosys goes around 1496, it will be a break-even price, and if it goes below 1496, there will be no use of buyback for retailers.
All right. Thank you, Pulkit, for taking us through that detail. Now, Infosys is the stock that we're going to track very closely today. But on that note, we're completely timed out with this edition of Market Cafe. Ankita and I will take your leave, but don't go anywhere, as the market will take all the action forward.
Whatever reduction